Good evening. I'm the Rock Dog.
And I'm Gabe.
Hope you guys are doing great tonight. So, at this very moment, everything's quiet. I don't hear a duck quacking. The dog's not slurping water or
Yeah.
snoring. So, we're going to go for this.
I don't see anything making noise. That's actually really impressive.
I know it's scary. So, we're going to try to delve into some of the mysteries of the universe tonight, I guess.
Yeah.
Gabe, something we're going to discuss tonight is very interesting because I've learned it wrong my entire life. And he was trying to show me, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so. Oh, there's Cuddles. Hello, your little tail.
Yeah. There was.
Oh, oh, gross. There's loogies on me. Oh, ew. Oh, okay. That can go on the B roll. Come here. Look at that. Ugh.
She has some on her face.
Well, okay, so much for our non-interruptions here. uh,
So, I was reading the Bible one time. I was reading it in Genesis, and it was talking about the firmament, the separation of waters. And I was reading, and it's like that doesn't make any sense from what like we've heard about. I was like, what does that mean? So I went to my mom, asked her, and she gave a very like simple answer of like it's just referring to like the atmosphere waters or like the clouds or there's even like a theory of like an ice shell that was formed around the Earth before like during the Ice Age. And I
well,
was like,
no,
that,
I thought the firmament meant Earth, like dirt. So I was
well,
way off.
actually, if I remember correctly, the first time misspoke, it said the remnant, not the firmament. And then she got a whole thing about the Revelations. Like that's not it at all. But after I showed her the Bible verses, you were talking about whatever you thought, and then I went, no, read it again. That's not what it's saying.
Yeah.
And I kept going over and over and over.
Because you
and,
asked what the firmament was, and I go, that's Earth, like dirt, you know?
Yeah, she couldn't get what I was trying to say. I was just speaking like I'm not saying anything other than what the verse is saying. Going that doesn't fit what this says, and then we just kept it took forever for her to figure out, and it took me actually drawing out as we were reading it exactly what it was saying for her to understand what I was saying.
Well, so read us. I'm still gross. Read us the most argued verse here, and see. So, because I think when he shows you guys and draws it out, you'll be kind of going, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah. So I guess you go ahead and read it, and I'll draw it.
Read it from here. Good thing I don't wear glasses. Genesis 1:7, and I think we're doing the new King James version. That's a little more modern with the these and thous.
Yeah, missing the these and thous.
Yeah. So it's God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. You want to draw so they can see that?
Yeah.
So he's doodling now.
Oops.
And misspelling.
I wrote N7M.
Okay.
So, you see how it says the firmament is between the two waters. It says, God made the firmament and divided the waters which are under the firmament and the waters which are above the firmament. And it was so. And God said the firmament was heaven. So then, let's redraw that again.
Oh, where does it say that? Genesis 1:8, and God called the firmament heaven. So firmament is heaven, and the evening and morning were the second day.
So I just retranslated it. Instead of firmament, just wrote heaven. So we might even just use heaven for that. But of course, heaven is usually referred to as the heavens, as in space and stars. So going for that, it's not saying there's waters above the heaven where God exists. It's saying there's the waters on earth and the waters above space, essentially.
Yeah. And that's the only thing we could conclude going over this and over this and over this, and he drew it several times.
Well, and also,
where's the second water that's above the heavens?
You said that's the water in the atmosphere, but it says there's a separation. The water in the atmosphere isn't necessarily distinct from the water on the ocean because it vaporizes off gas. It goes into the atmosphere. It's all connected. It's a circle. The precipitation in our atmosphere is the same as the water. It gets converted in a cycle. Like the rain coming down.
Yeah.
It's I'm not gonna go into the basics of it, but the point is that there is a distinction made here that there isn't in the atmosphere and in the oceans. Um, so one way to put it is the redraw what I just did, but in a circle.
Okay, so what's the circle?
So what I'm saying is, instead of drawing lines, if we consider the waters here to be the atmosphere, then the waters out here, the little squiggly lines, that's the ones above the firmament, and then this is outer space right here. So that's my thought is the firmament referring to the entirety of our universe, and then there's water surrounding the entire universe.
Yeah, because we were discussing exactly where the firmament ends and something else begins.
What I was saying is the distinction of the firmament from the atmosphere is because the Bible goes further into explain what the firmament is. So God called the firmament heaven, so the evening and the morning were the second day. Mm-hmm. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years." Which means the lights that divide day and night for us, aka the stars, exist within the firmament.
Mm-hmm.
Not outside of it, not under it, it's within it. So a good way to describe it is that the firmament isn't a thing that exists, it's a distinction between two things. A good way to show this off as an analogy is cold. When we think of cold, we think of it as the opposite of hot, because heat is a physical energy. There's something produces heat. It's an energy. So we think of cold as its own separate energy when it's actually the opposite of heat. So when we refer to cold, we're not referring to something being there, but the absence of something being there, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So the firmament is much like cold. It's the absence of the waters above and below the firmament, which is why the atmosphere doesn't count, because there's water in the atmosphere. There's no distinction. And, of course, the lights of the day and night don't exist within the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to say, again, back in the days of old, they knew the sun wasn't in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's still a distinction. Even this one, it says, "Let the waters abound with abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens."
Yeah, so then the birds are flying in the air.
No, well, specifically it says the face of the firmament. It's not saying they fly in the firmament. It's saying the face, as in.
Oh, that's true.
It's what we're facing. Is we can look at it. We're not in the firmament. We're in Earth, and so it's in the face of it. It's in front of it, because they go. In fact, even in some translations we saw, it says the birds fly within the firmament. But don't forget, there are some birds that can fly above the cloud line, which is essentially where the water vapor ends on Earth. There's probably still some that go beyond it. That's generally where the atmosphere's water settles.
Well, there's butterflies. They've seen that high up, even not just birds.
So even if it's were to say they flew within the firmament, technically they still do if we consider the cloud line as the pure distinction of water and space.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what you're saying, would air be the differentiator then? When there's no more air, you're now in the, are we...
No, I think it's still waters, because there's air above the cloud line, because there's still waters there too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still again, I think the firmament is referring to space itself. It's the absence of water. So it's not, it's like, you can't say there's a direct distinction. It's like cold. Mm-hmm. Some places can be cold or not, and some things could be cold and then become warm, So there could be water on other planets, but then those planets have water, which means they're not part of the firmament,
So water, in your mind, or what you're reading here, is water is the definition.
I would assume so. Well, firmament isn't water, but
right, but that's the divider.
Distinction. Yeah,
the distinction.
But also, I was thinking too, there's lots of water in space, isn't there? And I couldn't remember. But I remember I remember something about there being water like all over in space.
Yeah.
You know, of course we found water on Mars and all that. And I was thinking, isn't water like pervasive throughout the universe? And I guess there isn't water directly in space or the absence of anything else. There could be dust clouds and whatnot, and there could be particles of water, but they're not like everywhere. So there's still space is distinctly lacking in water, but water is still throughout all of space.
Yeah.
But it's located in places. So it's not like the entirety of space is an ocean, but there are billions of oceans exist in space essentially. You know, so there's still a distinction, but there's water out in the universe somewhere. You know, so it's everywhere. And maybe,
like a wall of water, like thick like the ocean.
What I'm saying is like there could be other planets with water on them. There could be water clouds in space. So there's still water in space, but space itself, the lack of anything, basically the vacuum of space has no water.
Yeah.
And so, but the point is you think of anything on Earth, and you're not likely to find an exact copy of it anywhere else in the universe, let alone everywhere in the universe, except for water. Water seems to be a universal constant.
Mm-hmm.
And so, even though the vacuum space has no water, water still is everywhere, which makes me think, you know, if this is saying there's a firmament, above the firmament is another layer of water, essentially one giant ocean, it would make sense that between those two waters would, the water would escape from one or the other, just like how on Earth, the vapors of the ocean and our lakes go into the atmosphere. They still kind of move around. Mm-hmm. So if there's a giant ocean surrounding the entire universe, it would eventually, some of it would come and move around the rest of the universe, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Not only that, but I believe it even mentions the water moving between one to the other.
It's fascinating though, because like I said, I've never had focus on it very much, and it is important because if you don't understand the beginning of the universe and the 6 days and all of that, and on the seventh day God rested, if you don't understand all of that, it's hard to understand the basis of where we are today. So I hate to say that's more of my husband's thing. I didn't focus too much on it. But now I realize things I've heard in church or from scholars or things I've read, if I didn't understand exactly the location of the firmament. So I always misinterpret it as Earth. And that's why it never made sense to me. So, it's like, it's funny where he has to get the board out and, this. It made total sense, So I'm like, maybe we need more dry erase boards. And, I'm obviously a visual learner, so... it gets kind of crazy.
I can't find it in this because I saw it in my own Bible, so
yeah.
So maybe my own Bible has a different translation.
Well, what about the article that you found there?
Well, really quickly, there was something I was going to mention. Now I can't remember because you said that. Well, for one, it says God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let divide the waters from the waters." Meaning, right. During creation, everything was engulfed in water. He made everything from water, or at least within the water, and didn't separate them afterwards.
Yeah,
which is interesting. Or he separated them, then made them. I'm going through this really quickly, so not to waste your time. But we were on the trail of, well, then where's water in the universe? Because I said, is it pervasive throughout all of the universe? And it's like, no, because the vacuum space doesn't have it. But scientists and astronauts or astronomers have discovered water sources throughout the universe, and when I looked up, I searched for water in space. The top article was this one about astronomers find largest, most distant reservoir of water, and so this is very interesting. There's 2 teams of astronomers have discovered the largest and farthest reservoir of water ever detected in the universe. The water, equivalent to 140 trillion times all the water in the world's ocean, surrounds a huge, feeding black hole called a quasar more than 12 billion light years away. Now, before we get any further, let's clarify some things. This is a large amount of water equivalent to 140 trillion times all the water in the world's ocean. So it's not actually all that much in the grand scheme of the entire universe. But it also surrounds a huge feeding black hole. Black holes, of course, absorb things and try to pull things in. There's an enormous amount of gravitational pressure and all that. So why is there water around it? In fact, shouldn't the water have eventually disappeared because it absorbed it and all that? So it actually goes further about this. The environment around this quasar is very unique in that it's producing this huge mass of water. It's producing.
Not pulling in, producing.
It's another demonstration that water is pervasive throughout the universe, even at the very earliest times. A quasar is powered by an enormous black hole that steadily consumes a surrounding disk of gas and dust. As it eats, the quasar spews out huge amounts of energy, and so the energy it produces is much more than 1,000 trillion suns, essentially. Water is astronomers expected water vapor to be present even in the early distant universe, but had not detected it this far away before. There is water vapor in the Milky Way, although the total amount is 4,000 times less than in the quasar, because most of the Milky Way's water is frozen in ice, which means this quasar is also producing water, not ice. Although it didn't later clarifies that it's not in a liquid form, but a gaseous form. So it's water vapor. But still, I looked in a different article and says that when you put water out into space, it boils and freezes because of the lack of heat, as well as the pressure difference. The pressure difference causes it to instantly boil, but then the lack of heat causes it to instantly freeze. So it basically turns into gas and immediately freezes. However, around this quasar, it is not freezing. It's actually staying warm enough despite being below freezing temperatures, which it says here. I basically just summarized it.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, so do you think it's pulling water from one part of the universe and sending it somewhere else?
I don't know about that, because when it says it's producing tons of energy after absorbing all that dust and all that, I think of it like you would a fire. A lot of people think, when you think of the law that nothing can be created nor destroyed, only changed. I think, I'm not sure if changed is the word, but basically, something can't become something else without going through change, and something can't just suddenly not exist.
Yeah.
So when it's pulling in all the gas and dust in the universe, the black hole is, it's not just making them magically disappear. It's doing something to them. And so much like a fire, if you set wood on fire, the fire isn't the wood. The wood isn't transforming into the fire. The wood is transforming into soot or charcoal or whatever. But the fire, the heat of the fire, is the energy being outputted from that conversion process, essentially. To put it in most simple terms. There's obviously still parts of the fire that are like flakes of the wood being burnt up. So the fire is more than just the heat energy, but it still produces heat from the energy of the conversion process. So for me, the idea that it's pulling in gas and dust, then spewing out large amounts of energy, as well as water, makes me think it's not converting the dust into energy, it's converting it into water, and then the energy output is because of the conversion process, much like in fire.
Yeah.
So that's one thought of mine, is that it's converting stuff from the universe back into water. Well, I guess back into is not,
Yeah.
But maybe it was water at some point, and But the point is, there's things in the universe that are creating water, because otherwise, like, it's really hard to make water, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, where does the water come from? I mean, obviously, water is recycled throughout not only our planet, but apparently the universe.
Yeah, that's my thought. It's a because it said I'm not sure if it was on here, but a different one is that they're like dust clouds, but there's water like in them. So in some sense, there's some sort of conversion process, creating the dust clouds, but there's still water within them, or they can be turned into water, or vice versa. So there's a lot we still don't know, but the point is that there's water in the universe in different forms and factors, and it's something as strong as a black hole is spewing out water, not absorbing back in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a conversion process. But also when we think of like wormholes and all that, they I wonder if water has anything to do with those too, or when people die to see the tunnel of light, and a lot of people theorize it could be a wormhole or something like that. What if it has something to do with the waters of the firmament or outside above the firmament? If the entire universe is encased in a shell of water, perhaps a frozen gaseous form, or it's not even frozen, but still probably gaseous, just because it seems that even in this situation it's not fully liquid. But even so, what if that is surrounding the universe and keeping it intact and separate from the heavens? And so when people die and see that tunnel, maybe that tunnel is like an actual tunnel within like the universe, and your body has to go through it or something. I don't know.
Well, it makes sense if
And when you say tunnel light, they're referring to it's like a dark tunnel, but then there's a
light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, so it's not like the tunnel is made of light, right?
No, it's dark, and then it opens up towards light towards the end, or people say you go towards the light, or which I think this is fascinating because water is universal conduit or lubricant, because you have to be born through water, and so it would make sense
and baptized for
and
water.
baptized. It would make water is universal solvent, better than anything there is. It makes sense that when you die, you'd have to go back through water, just because everything seems to be cyclical. So seems more probable than possible, if you ask me.
Not to mention, water is so pervasive in spiritual matters too.
Yep.
Like there's nothing else on earth that is so prevalent to spiritual issues than water. When I cleanse something, you use water. What else would it be like? You go into that.
Well, I mean, then you're going into like water and negative ions and positive ions and that whole spiritual thing. You find spiritual people of, be it Christian or atheist or Wiccan or witch or almost all different religions, tend to gravitate towards water. Even, of course, civilization gravitates towards water, but water is, like you said, baptism. It's used in so many different spiritual rituals. So, water is very, very important. I think, for those reasons, a lot of it is because we're born through water. Everything comes through water. It's like we innately know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to get to. It's like, it's very clear that all of human civilization has been aware of the importance of water. And, like, water is hard to even make. I think scientists, is like, most things, if you mix the two like molecules together, you get the new one, or how to explain this? Like, I needed an example to use.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't believe we can actually produce water. We can only recycle it.
Yeah, like if you take
move it around.
If you take two gases, like
hydrogen atoms, I think it's two hydrogen atoms.
Yeah, what I'm saying is you take like two separate things, you put them together, you make the new thing. There's a combination of those two.
Yeah.
Like we can recreate other things except for water. There's a specific process that must be done in order to make it. And I don't think we can. But I'm not entirely sure on that.
Yeah.
So like, if anyone in the comments happens to be like a scientist who knows better than us,
please give us some info.
Because I want to know what that process is in order to convert 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen into water.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I feel like if you like take like vinegar and oil and you mix them together, you could there's something there, but like
salad dressing.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like other things on Earth, you mix the two together, they mix together. But hydrogen and oxygen, if you mix them together, you don't get water.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Yeah.
How things break down to elements, but you can't recreate them that way.
Yeah, so there still has to be some sort of conversion process to get it back in the water. But I'm pretty sure there's ways to do that. I'm not familiar.
Yeah.
But anyways, so going off that, water is very pervasive in spirituality. It's also incredibly important to all aspects of life. And it apparently is one of the few things on Earth that are actually pervasive throughout the whole universe too. So water is incredibly important to literally everything.
Yeah.
And so it kind of makes sense that it is possible that no matter how vast the universe is, eventually there's an end to it where there's water.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Obviously some scientists are starting to lean towards that or hypothesize that. So
Yeah. We also found another article that just so happened to be directly talking about this last one we talked about, in which was talking about how that is proves the theory that I just came up with. Apparently, I'm not the only one. And to go through it really quickly, I guess some physicist proposed in a 1994 book, Starlight in Time, that water is above the firmament, instead referred to a tremendously huge sphere of water, the remnants of which exist today outside all the stars in an abound and expanding universe. So, I'm not the only person, but it's kind of funny that the book was written the year I was born, and then I came up with the exact same theory.
yeah,
But this article was also written 10 years ago.
that's true.
This is something that people keep coming up with, but it's not really been growing. But enough people have thought about this, including a physicist. He even refers to other passages in the Bible, like Psalm 148, verse 3 through 4, appears to clarify the placement of these waters above the firmament. Praise ye him, sun and moon. Praise ye him, all ye stars of light. Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens. Mm-hmm. Emphasis added. Meaning...
So there has to be waters above the heavens somewhere.
Because it's very clearly saying the sun, moon, stars of light, heaven of heavens are... It's clarifying that when we say the heavens, we are mentioning space, stars, moons. Then it says the waters above those heavens. Mm-hmm. So it's not like there's no difficulty in understanding there's a distinction there. Like it's laid plain as day.
Yes, just how far do you have to go to find the waters of above the heaven? Because
clearly scientists still haven't seen the edge of the universe.
Yeah.
So this is unfathomably large, especially when you consider the amount of water just that one quasar is 140 trillion times the amount of water on Earth.
That's crazy.
And that's just like one quasar, one black hole,
Well, definitely, in the comments, tell us what you think, or if you find other articles, please post them. Anything. It's a subject definitely worth looking into.
Yeah, we were quite a bit on it because there's a lot to look through, and we still don't have all the answers, but I think it's interesting that it's laid plain as day when you're reading it. It's pretty obvious that's what it's explaining, but so few people have figured it out. And then when I figured it out, I looked online, and apparently other people have, but a few of them even being scientists, but it's just not really got to be very big. So I think it's something to think about for other people. I think it needs to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely love to see if you guys have already been studying this and have found, or if you're following this theory and found other proof, definitely give us some links or things, because we'd be fascinated to look into it.
Plus, this is something that, if this is true, it's not only is it something we, in our current era of science, can't even discover yet, because it's so far out there, the idea of the entire universe being enveloped in water, because they still, in the furthest reaches of space, only found like pockets of water. So we still haven't seen the edge of the universe. Which means if the Bible, written all those years ago, makes reference to something that is yet to be discovered, there's no way they knew about that,
Yeah.
So this probably is something too to further. And if you have any doubts,
Or else, here's the crazier theory: is if they wrote about this much, this may have been common knowledge to everybody back then. Much like we say the sky, the moon, the stars, they must have had this as common knowledge. So either they knew more about space and time and everything than we did,
or it's only because God gave the writer of Genesis, I think it was Moses, was it?
I think so.
Gave him specific knowledge that others did not have access to.
Yeah.
Because like another thing too was
Moses got his knowledge through Enoch. I mean, a lot of this was considered common knowledge. So back at the time, he was kind of just rewriting, I think, what some of this was considered common knowledge. As much as we know, let's say American history, George Washington or whatever, they knew their modern, to them it was modern history. So it's fascinating.
it's something that couldn't have been known, but it's scientifically plausible at the very least. But if you go back to Genesis, a lot of these things that seem so weird, if you think of it from a different context, you start realizing that it makes more sense from a scientific view than what we previously thought, and it's stuff that they shouldn't have known back then.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, in Genesis 2, verse 7, it says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground." And that sounds like one of those mythological things if he got like clay and it magically turned into human.
Right. That's what most people think. That's what
and so a lot of people kind of disregard it as it's just some weird mythological thing you just have to accept. It's like, but dust is carbon, and all humans are carbon-based life forms.
Yeah.
So when he says he made them of dust, that means that the people writing the book couldn't have had knowledge of what carbon is, but were told that that's what we're made up of, and took the closest analogy to what carbon is and wrote that down, going, all right, carbon is like dust, so we'll just say we're formed of dust.
Yeah.
It's like, well, God specifically said carbon, but that, I guess that word didn't exist, or he had no way to convey convey the concept to early human other than say it's like dust.
Yeah.
So you have to read through Genesis with a scientific point of mind, but you have to really understand what they're saying, because it's saying it in such a simple, what would be the word, imaginative way. It's like I said, they're not going to say, and God formed man of carbon. It's going to say they formed him of dust, but dust, dirt is carbon, and we're made of carbon, So there is a scientific principle they couldn't have known back then, but it's plainly obvious to us now.
Yeah.
So definitely do that. Read through the Bible with the knowledge that these things are stuff that don't make sense the way it's written until you think of it. You have to think of it how they perceived it back then, and then what we know now. There's a lot of scientific principles in the Bible that were later discovered, but were there the whole time.
Right. And no one takes Genesis as a scientific part of the Bible anyways, but you can if you dig through this, it's very scientific. Yeah. So, and you do need to know your origins to know where you're going as well. Like I said, my husband's been fascinated with it, and maybe that's why you like to dig through it. And we always like to dig through things and make sure we're reading all the right angles and all that.
Well, I always like science because science is cool and everything's made of science. It's just rule sets for how the universe works.
Yeah.
And there's always this belief that science and creationism are completely distinct. There's no crossover whatsoever. But just think of the very simple concept of science is the basic rules for how the universe works, and everything works exactly by those rules no matter what. And God is a God of rules and laws.
Yeah.
He's a governing body that created a universe that is governed by rules and laws.
Exactly.
So, if anything, it makes more sense to come at these things through the perspective of a scientific mindset, because God created science.
Yeah, the two can completely work together. In fact, you can't really understand anything without both minds.
Yeah.
And I never thought you're not taught to look at the Bible scientifically. It's always kind of allegorical or romantic or but you can really take it for what it says, and if you do, you go on fascinating studies. That's kind of where this led to.
Yeah. But of course, I'm sure a lot of people will read this and go, well, early man only knew about these things because they're told it by aliens or whatever,
Yeah.
And it's like, then where do the aliens come? Like, it's a never-ending thing of, well, if they learned from this, how did they learn it, and so on.
Right.
So either way, it's like there's something up. They knew something, But
yeah. Well,
saying it was aliens still doesn't.
Easy.
Well, not only is it too easy, but it doesn't actually explain anything at all.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, the aliens shouldn't know all this stuff either. They just only went, where did... It's just extending the timeline. It's not actually explaining anything, because the aliens at some point were just like early man and couldn't have known this ahead of time either.
Well, and I would assume, let's say today the aliens come down and give you all the secrets to the universe, you're not going to take it as fact. you're still going to need to see it for yourself, because then you're still like, well, they're just saying this. How do they know? So I can't imagine ancient man if aliens just showed up and they go, this is how it happened. If they couldn't show them proof in some way, I mean,
well,
maybe
especially
over
because
time.
I doubt they would be able to explain anything in their own language, or they would have to show them because they couldn't explain it anyway other than showing them. So either way,
yeah, it's exactly. It's interesting. We were digging through too, like aliens and the origin and and what they are, and we know what we believe, but I think even scholars could argue all day on those things. But we found some interesting bunny trails that like I was having him read the Book of Enoch, which look it up. It's readily available on the internet. But and it was one of the lost books. It was removed from the Bible. I believe they just decided to not put it in there, mainly because of this one thing. Enoch was taken up by, I think it was angels, and was shown the universe and the planets. And so I don't know if you still have it pulled up there. Yeah. So yeah, he was shown a view of something that the humans had never seen at that time. So I think maybe they felt that was too fantastical or anything, but Enoch knew these things. He probably told it to his children. They told it to their children. It goes on over time. Eventually would have trickled down to Moses. I mean, these were accepted there. And what we found so interesting was the archangels going towards the aliens, because in the Bible there's 3 archangels mentioned: Gabriel, Lucifer, and Michael. We all know Lucifer fell, so that leaves 2. However, in the Book of Enoch there was 7, and I don't know if you can pull up their names, but
I don't think that was in the Book of Enoch. I think we saw that in the Bible.
It was actually in the Book of Enoch. It's in there.
No, it wasn't here. You found it.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it was in the notes here, but it is in the Book of Enoch.
Well, find it there again.
Yeah, so the reason it's interesting...
Find it first and talk. Then we can cut out the waiting.
Well, it was...
Unless you have something else to talk, because that's going to slow you down talking while you're looking
Not
through.
really. Well, so anyways, there's 7... There it is. 7 angels. Yeah, see, he took this from... this is Perry Stone's Hebraic Study Bible. This is the Old Testament. So, but he gets this from his source, and this is from the original Torah. And again, they probably took it from the Book of Enoch. It's in there, the names of the 7 angels. But this was actually the race of giants, not the angels.
But that was the point.
Yeah. Anyways, so I'd have to pull it up there. Race of giants comes, we're going down some lists here, but if you look up the 7 angels, so there was 3 in the Bible about. There were 7, I believe it was like Raphael. See if he can find it. Anyways, as far as how this relates to aliens today, that I found so fascinating was, of course, the angels fell. It's known that some angels or sons of God procreated with the women of earth, and in the Torah, you'd have to get here, it's Deuteronomy. Yeah. So Deuteronomy 2:10-11.
Where's the names? We started with A or something? A and...
These are giants.
Yeah, what was the one?
Enoch.
Yeah.
Enoch. Enochi. So anyways, if you ever watch the crazy haired Greek guy that all the memes are made about the aliens, I see aliens everywhere.
Sorry.
Just about everything he says is about the Enochi. Well, one of the giants who came from the fallen angels, they were was called Anakim, Enochi with an MS.
You mispronounced it. Anakim.
Yeah.
It's literally Anaki. He just added M at the end.
Yeah, the
but
M
it's still
at the end.
pronounced exactly the same way.
Exactly, and there's also the Rephaim, which Raphael, if that was an archangel. I mean, you start to see a pattern here. But anyways,
Yeah.
I find it fascinating because again, these are names that aliens have called themselves now. People that
There was uh where was it? The Rephaim. You said it sounded like reptilian or something.
no, like Raphael.
Yeah.
You know, Rapha, Eames.
Yeah.
There's the Ememes, Avemes, and Zamzumim, and Anakim, as you said. But like I said,
Yeah.
it's interesting that scholars right now that study the aliens and things like that, and the ancient aliens, that's the name of that show, bring up the Anunnaki all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like this is too similar here. Obviously, you either have some history that was lost or mistranslated. You know how things change over time. So we just ended up kind of going down this tangent when we were talking about it.
Yeah.
And again, it would take us, we need to study it more. Maybe we'll come up with an answer for you of the sons of God and the Nephilim, and all of these things.
Yeah, because I'm so confused on what the Nephilim are even referring to because
right. It's a different version of some. In some versions, it's Nephilim. In other versions, it's sons of God. You know, and you have to research it further. We're gonna have to go back into the Greek and the history and things like that because, again, that's one of those verses that I've been told by different scholars and everybody. They all say it means different things. Some people are dead set that that's the angels of God. Other people are dead set that that's demons. You know, so we're gonna have to study that to get a good answer. So we didn't want to go on to that, but you know, where do aliens come from? You know, again, probably one of the most debated things around. I firmly believe just because of their behavior that they are not of God. You know, any people that are being abducted by aliens, bad things are happening to them. You know, it's never positive, and that just makes me think that they are definitely anti-goodness. They're anti-God, and just the history too. The things that people see, people that are into spiritual warfare, people that investigate things. Aliens tend to always be a spiritual thing. I can tell you of an experience I had, and I drive out to California. I was with my daughter, and we were on our way back, and we got stranded in New Mexico. And we were thinking to ourselves, "Oh no, we're gonna get stuck in Roswell. We don't want to get stuck. We kind of want to see Roswell, but we don't want to get stuck in Roswell because it's a spiritual thing." And we ended up in Tucumcari, I think it was.
Well, I would clarify when you why it's a spiritual thing because it's not the first time you've been through New Mexico,
Yeah.
right?
Every time we would hit certain parts of New Mexico, we would feel very uncomfortable, not just in the spirit, but physically. And so we're like, maybe there is something to this whole alien thing as far as that it was an uncomfortable feeling like you're being watched. But yeah, so we ended up in Tucumcari. Long story short, and I'm going on bunny trails here, but they're all going to wrap around. And we'll circle back to this. But we're sitting there, and we ended up in Tucumcari, and there was like one hotel, so we stayed in it. And we walk in, and we're exhausted, and we flip on the TV, and the movie playing is Signs. We went, oh my gosh, we can't get a break. So, like fools, we left it on, you know, because we're like, we like this movie, and we're laughing at each other. And then I got the distinct, and we weren't telling each other nothing. It was just me and my daughter. I got the distinct feeling I was being watched. And then I kept thinking I was going to see aliens if I looked out the window. And I started to get a little bit uncomfortable. I shut
it was
the
like
drinks.
paranoia.
It was almost a paranoia that.
But you don't usually get paranoia.
Yeah, and I don't get it. And it was coming on me. And I went to the bathroom, and I come back out, and it's a sliding door, and I slide it. My daughter's right in my face. She's like, Mom, I think we need to pray because something's not right here. And it was definitely, this just kept coming on and coming on all night. We're like, we couldn't wait to get out of there. We just tore out of there, like, let's get out of New Mexico. But I just know so many people have experienced things like this, that aliens have a negative demonic connotation. I also know people who've encountered them that are believers and immediately rebuked them, and they're gone. They clearly are bound to the same rules in spiritual warfare as demonic entities. So just based on those evidences, and you could go all, and I could come up with that other evidence, but just based on that, I firmly believe that they're demonic because of their behavior and the rules that they seem to be stuck under. it's also very rare that a true Holy Spirit filled believer, everything's, that they rarely have problems with or encounters with aliens, you know. So it's just kind of a, I don't know what you call that. It's not evidence based, but it's quantitative, you know, preponderance of the evidence, so to speak.